One of the things that we could really use a lot more of is nuance. It's easy to say that something's good or bad. It's a lot harder to acknowledge both the good and bad in something, especially something that's often misused. Stereotypes get a bad rap, but sometimes we need them to simplify all the information that we fill our heads with. That's all a stereotype really is, a way to simplify the world. The reason stereotypes get a bad rap is because they're full of traps. But if we're aware of the traps, then we can navigate the world a whole lot better and avoid alienating or offending most people. Some of the biggest problems with stereotypes are when we disregard someone's individuality in favor of our stereotypes. When we rush to apply our stereotypes to whatever we can, when we look down on groups of people for behaviors or culture that we don't have a deep understanding of, or when we refuse to let our generalizations change or evolve. I also feel that we're way too eager to share our stereotypes when these are usually just our own personal assessments and we don't have a full picture of things. We use the stereotypes to understand the culture. There's always a ton of variety among any demographic, but when a pattern emerges, especially when it's passed down, we call that culture. Culture is culture, but every individual is an individual too. We'll never be able to understand the individual if we can only see them as the culture. Even the most stereotypical people have their own unique characteristics. I try to treat every individual as an individual. I use certain cues to guess their political leanings, their income, their lifestyle choices, background, orientation, but I'm eager to let them prove me wrong and to show me more depth to their personality too. I also don't make them feel like they're stereotypes. I like crushing my own stereotypes and generalizations with new information, so I'm looking to break my own stereotypes. I'm looking to fill out my understanding of things. New information helps me understand the world better and have better interactions with people. I can learn from the culture and I can learn from all the exceptions to the mainstream. Here's an example of how I use a stereotype. Japanese people tend to be shy. I don't think there are many people out there who would disagree with this, but this generalization is just a means of knowing how to navigate Japanese culture in general and interact with Japanese people who often happen to be shy. I don't treat every single Japanese person I meet as if they're shy, and I understand that there are plenty of exceptions. Over time, I learn certain details about the culture, more specific generalizations that help me navigate even better. So, for example, people from Osaka tend to be more outgoing because historically it was a commerce center. You'll also find that people in Japan become way more extroverted when they drink. Still, when I meet a new person in Japan, I look at their individual behaviors. I don't immediately try to lump them into the category of shy if they don't show themselves to be shy. I don't blame their shyness on the fact that they're Japanese, even if I can make a correlation. There are always individual circumstances that shape people, like their parents, their teachers, their friends, the media they consume, and how they interpret their surroundings. If I simplify the individual based on the stereotype and always operate under the assumption that Japanese equals shy, I end up denying the person's individuality. Sometimes there's an extra layer of complexity, like with Japanese culture, because in a collectivist society, fitting into a stereotype isn't always seen as a bad thing, and some people readily fit into the stereotypes themselves. These people might stereotype you without seeing it as a bad thing, too. They're proud to fit into their group. I find this makes it a little more difficult to connect as individuals, but I'm not going to force someone who prefers this kind of collectivist mindset to interact like a full on individualist. Hopefully, we can rub off on each other and we can find a middle ground. Eventually, they come to see me as an individual, and I get to learn more about who they really are and what makes them special. Regardless, there are always people with high EQs everywhere you go in every culture, so these people will tend to see you as who you are instead of trying to fit you into a very specific group. Being stereotyped might feel okay to people who willingly fit into the stereotype, but for anyone who doesn't feel like they fit into the stereotype, it feels unfair and it makes it really difficult to want to connect with the person who's making the stereotype. I don't think it's a great thing to look at each other as alien, even when the differences are undeniable. We can acknowledge the differences and try to bridge them in order to go deeper. In Asia, many people assume I love eating hamburgers or steaks because I was born and raised in America. Some people can't even accept the fact that I rarely eat hamburgers or steak. They're unwilling to process any information that breaks their stereotypes. Sometimes when I break a lot of American stereotypes, people say to me, "Oh, you're like a Japanese person," or "You're basically Asian already." But I just kind of shrug that off because I don't look at it that way. I'm a complex maze of culture and I love that about myself. Another example that comes to mind, I hear a lot of people assume that all vegans are judgmental of meat eaters, but with most of my vegan friends, that's really not how it is. They recognize that not everyone's going to adopt the same lifestyle as them, and so they generally don't judge people for not being vegan as long as those people don't judge them for being vegan. These things apply to almost any group that you can categorize. People with different politics, lifestyle, race, orientation, people working in different industries, people with certain hobbies or tastes, social status, and even more specific groups of people. Trying to simplify the world in our minds can help us understand things on a surface level, but it prevents us from building deeper connections when we focus on them too much. So there's a time and a place for these kind of generalizations. If we use a little empathy, we can connect on a much deeper level with all kinds of people, and that makes life more interesting and fun. It might even make the world a better place.